So the country I chose for my country presentation is Yemen. It's a coincidence that my first name and Yemen both start with the letter Y, but I'm gonna tell you the story. But so Yemen is where I originate from. Yemen is where my blood comes from. So Yemen is where my ancestors are from. My name is Yazan Bakhreba. Bakhreba comes from Hadramaut. Hadramaut is a city in Yemen. So that's where my originality comes from. It comes from Yemen. So what makes Yemen so special is it used to be such a beautiful and strong country, a very respectable historic country. Whereas today Yemen has gotten itself into poverty, it's gotten itself into there's a lot of drought going on, which is really messing up Yemen's economy because Yemen lives off of like crops and stuff. Even though they are rich in oils and resources, they're more of a country that doesn't export their products. They just keep their products and they use them. So they do have oils and stuff, which is what makes Saudi Arabia and other Middle Eastern countries so rich, is them exporting their resources. But Yemen doesn't, due to the wars and stuff. They would use the oil for war instead. So Yemen is a very it's a country of war right now. There's a lot of poverty going on. About 80% of the country is living in poverty, and 65% is living in extreme poverty. So the country is really going through a rough time right now. It's actually the poorest country in the Middle East at the moment. So yeah, this is my original home, Yemen. So Sana'a. Sana'a is the capital of Yemen, located on the west side of Yemen. Um, Sana'a is a beautiful city. It doesn't look very modern, but it's much more modern than all the other cities because Yemen hasn't really changed much over the time. Yemen has pretty much stayed the same. That's how Yemen is. It's a very conservative country. Well, actually, there's a lot of history that goes to why Yemen has not progressed. So yeah, Yemen, Sana'a, the capital, is located on the west side of the country. You have the government. Yemen is actually a republic, different than other, which is what makes it special. Is it's different than other countries in the Middle East. Like Saudi Arabia is a monarchy. You have UAE, which is, UAE it's a monarchy too. You have Bahrain, the Kingdom of Bahrain. You have Kuwait. Those are all monarchies, and they're all ruled by a king. So that's what makes Yemen different. Is that it's a republic. It's ruled by a president, and the president changes. It's like there's you can vote. So yeah, it's a constitutional republic. Languages in Yemen, they speak Arabic, but the difference between Arabic in Yemen and in Saudi Arabia and in Kuwait and in other Middle Eastern countries is that there's different dialect, and Yemeni dialect is very strong. It's sometimes I personally I speak Arabic fluently, but sometimes I wouldn't understand Yemeni language because it would just sound so it would sound so weird. They would stress on some letters which I'm not used to, and I wouldn't understand the word. But they speak Arabic, just a weird dialect of Arabic, just like Moroccans, for example. So we move on to the geography of Yemen. Yemen is located right under Saudi Arabia. It borders Saudi Arabia and Oman, and it borders the Arabian Sea and the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. So, like I said, Sana'a is located on the west side of Yemen. Here is where Ta'az would be, and here is where Hadramaut would be. This is where I am from, right here, the east side of Yemen. I'm from the complete opposite side of Yemen. So, like we took on our map quizzes, we know where Yemen is, and we know that there is the countries on Africa like Ethiopia, Somalia, Djibouti, and Eritrea, which are close to Yemen but don't border it because the Red Sea is right in between it. So Yemen is right there. Yemen is in Asia. It's in the Middle East, but the Middle East is in Asia. So yeah, that's Yemen for you. That's where Yemen is located. Well-known landmarks in Yemen, like Dar al-Hijar. Dar al-Hijar is translated is the house of the rocks. So this house is located. It's a house, but it's an apartment building, which is located on a mountainous area. It's actually on the top of the mountains, and there's other mountains like from views So this is what you would see if you lived in those apartments. I know it doesn't look very modern, but this is actually where a lot of the wealthy people live. So yeah, Al Salah Mosque. Al Salah Mosque is a famous mosque in Sana'a. It's actually the mosque in the previous slide. It's actually the mosque that's in the middle of Sana'a. It's a very well-known mosque, which makes it a landmark. This is where a lot of people go to perform their prayers, and yeah, it's a really beautiful place. I mean, this is one of the top touristic areas in where if anyone were to visit Yemen, that's where you'd want to go for a landmark. So yeah, Al Salah Mosque. Moving on to traditional customs. So you have the men and the women. So coming from an Arabic background, Yemen is in the Middle East. So women are recognized to cover themselves to just kind of to whereas when you come from a place of like Saudi Arabia, they're very, excuse me, Charlotte, excuse me. Anyways, so women from Saudi Arabia are very conservative women. They would cover themselves completely and not show a single piece of their skin, while the men actually try to look good in Yemen. It's just it's a type of style, but this is, as I said before, this is old Yemen. This is when Yemen was beautiful. This is when Yemen was at its best, when it was well known. So coming to recent Yemen today, a lot of people don't even have clothes to wear because of the poverty that they live in. But going back to the history of Yemen, excuse me, watch out, Charlotte. So yeah, this is old Yemen. So the men would always carry a dagger with them. It's a sign of manhood. It's a sign of, basically it is just manhood. It's like when you have a dagger, you show that, oh, I'm a man. Because for boys, when you turn 13, you actually have a party that signifies that you're a man, and you can get married. Boys, you would get married at ages of 12, 13, 14, just to prove that they are men. So yeah, they would have their daggers, they would wear their agal, and they would wear their thobe and a vest over it. The thobe is the white dress that they would wear under it. So yeah. Anyways, so this is what the men would wear. And the women, like I said, they would cover themselves, wear a lot of jewelry on their neck and on their bracelets. They would have their henna done, like the designs on your hand and on your arms, make themselves look pretty, but then usually they'd only cover their face and where only their eyes would show. I used to make fun of it and call it like a ninja thing when I was a kid, but in all realistics, women would wear makeup and mostly just in their top, their eyebrows and their eyes, and make themselves look attractive. But they couldn't. Sex in Yemen or in the Middle East is very, very sacred. So it's only saved for marriage. So women and men wouldn't have sex until they're married. So that's the way it is. And men can marry up to 4 women religiously. So yeah. Moving on to traditions. So there is the traditional men's dance called Sharh. I am not going to present that today, but the Sharh is a type of dance in where the men perform in weddings and gatherings and friendly, just any event really. They would just start dancing, and where they have the tabla and they make their beats, and you have someone who's shaking other instruments, and then you just see people. It's more of just walking back and forth, and then you kick at some points. And yeah, that's traditional dancing of Sharh. And then you have the henna, as I was talking about. The women would have their hands painted with henna, and it would leave beautiful marks. Like they would design it and artistically make designs and make themselves look beautiful. And this was like a big tradition, and it still is a big tradition in the Arabic culture. But long time ago, this was not created in Yemen, but it was a very, very common. And until today, it's common until today. So women would have henna to make themselves feel and look beautiful. So that was the representation of henna. Going back to the Sharh, I actually went to many weddings and family gatherings with my family and my dad's friends who were getting married, and I was actually forced a couple of times to dance with my dad, but I learned, and it was a fun experience. Even though I've never been to Yemen, my family, they still act and they still treat the country, and they respect the country that they love, because this is the country that we originate from. So we still perform these dances, and it's crazy because I still have family who perform these traditions, and I perform it when I'm with them, but not when I'm alone and I'm in America. So that's what makes those traditions so special to me. So there's the religion and there's the holidays. So religion, it's mainly Islam. 99.1% the country is an Islamic country. Whereas there's still Jews, there's still Christians, and it's crazy because even though it's only 0.9%, there's actually a lot of Jews and Christians who I know of from Yemen. So there's a lot of wealthy Christian and Jewish people in Yemen. That's mostly the higher class of the country. So yeah, excuse me. So yeah, that's for the religion. This picture right here was actually taken during the Eid prayer. So for Eid is a holiday. Actually, it's an Islamic holiday. So what it is people go in the morning, and this one morning it's called Salat al-Eid. We all go and we pray together and we celebrate Eid after fasting Ramadan. Ramadan is where we fast for a whole month. We fast from sunrise to sunset without no food or no water. And then after that we celebrate with Eid. And this is the prayer of Eid, right here. So this man is leading the prayer, and then there is his folks behind him. And they would pray. So this, not only is it a religion, it's part of our holiday, it's part of our traditions. Holidays and it's like religion and holidays are mixed together for Islamic states or for Muslim countries. And then moving on to other holidays, we have the Independence Day, which is November 30th. So it's crazy how there is an Independence Day for Yemen, which is November 30th, the same as how there's the Independence Day, which is July 4th for the U.S. That's a similarity between my country and my, or at least my original country in the U.S. So that's a cool comparison, how there's an Independence Day no matter where you are. And then yeah, so for the Independence Day, they're not only celebrated in Yemen, it's actually celebrated in Saudi Arabia too. Saudi Arabia and Yemen, they work hand in hand, so it's more of like a brotherhood bond. So there's a lot of Yemenis who live in Saudi Arabia. So that's why the Independence Day is celebrated not only in Yemen but also in Saudi Arabia. So yeah, that's the holidays for Yemen. And the religion, Islam. Islam is really a basic religion for the entire Middle East. It's not just limited to Yemen. Islam is just known, which it's just part of our culture. Religion is part of culture, and that's what the Middle East is about. It's about Islam. Peace, love, and harmony. So, moving on to food, my favorite part, mendi. Mendi, this traditional food, which is originated from Yemen, is actually served in Saudi Arabian restaurants, it's served in Kuwait restaurants, it's served in UAE restaurants, it's served in every Middle Eastern restaurants, and it's well known for it. And everyone has imitated the food that originates from Yemen, which is mendi. Chicken with seasoned rice, and it's seasoned chicken, of course. It's seasoned with kebsa spices and other types of Arabic herbs and spices, which gives it a distinct taste and makes it really strong. So yeah, so there is the chicken and the rice, and I judging from my experience, and you can take my word for it, delicious. And then you have sabaya. Sabaya is a dessert, a Yemeni dessert, which is actually served in Saudi Arabia too, but not as popular as mendi. Sabaya is a very Yemeni traditional dish, so mostly Yemenis would eat those. Like the local Yemeni restaurants in Saudi Arabia would be selling sabaya, whereas Saudi Arabian restaurants would not. So this is more of just a Yemeni culture. So what it is it's bread, you put some seeds on it on top, and you put some syrup on the bread, and you cut it up like a pizza, and where you put some syrup, but the bread is cooked with honey. So it tastes really sweet, and the honey in Yemen is actually the most delicious honey in the world. Like, it's actually a fact. It's the most expensive honey in the world is the honey that comes from Yemen. So yeah, that's pretty cool. That's a cool fact about Yemen. So They put syrup and then they put honey, and they cook the bread with honey, with the most expensive honey in the world, and it tastes delicious. Moving on to fun facts. So, Yemen actually has the oldest skyscrapers in the world, which leaves us with the fact that Yemen has built the first skyscrapers in history, which is an amazing fact because it's changed a lot of the industrial world. The first skyscrapers built off of mud. And they still stand until today, even after all the wars. Those mud skyscrapers stand until today. So this is Taz. This is central Yemen. This is where my mom comes from. This is where my mother's parents were raised, in those skyscrapers over here. Going back to my presentation, the oldest skyscrapers in the world built in Taz. So those skyscrapers were the skyscrapers where my grandparents lived in, actually. So that's a pretty cool fact. They are the oldest skyscrapers in history. So that's a pretty cool fact. And then you have Socotra. Socotra is a type of tree that carries a lot of nutrients and has a lot of resources to it, and which can be sold, and it's really rare, so it sells for a good amount of money. So this was the main form of exporting goods and where Yemen would make their money. So this was a beautiful part of Yemen, and whereas today, this wasn't rare back then, but today it makes it rare. It is rare because Yemen has invested their money not in Socotra but in Ghat, a drug that is harvested and then sold within the country. So this is not an exporting good anymore. Not anymore, it isn't, but it used to be, and used to make a lot of money for the country. But right now, since the country does not sell this, they actually don't make a lot of money anymore. They sell Ghat. That's what they harvest. It's a plant that it gets them. It's just a drug plant. So is what they do. So they grow it, and then instead of Socotras, and they use it inside the country instead of exporting it. So that's not a good thing. Moving on to similarities with home country. So, my home country is Saudi Arabia. That's where I was raised. I've never been to Yemen, but that's where I originate from. So, the similarities is that we speak the same language. As I said, although we have different dialects, I could understand another Yemeni, or I could understand other Saudi Arabians. Like, we can understand each other, but to a certain extent. And then the same holidays based off of religion. We have Ramadan, Eid. We have all our religions. All our holidays are the same, which means that our religion is the same. So the same time we're celebrating something due to a religion, it's a holiday which celebrates both in Yemen and in Saudi Arabia. So yeah, since the religion is linked, the holidays are linked too. The differences with my home country, this is Saudi Arabia and that's Yemen, is that Yemen is old. Yemen is a very old country, has a lot of history connected to the Ottoman Empire, while Saudi Arabia is less than 100 years old. Saudi Arabia is only this rich of a country because of its resources that they've exported and used wisely. It's crazy because Yemen, back then, Saudi Arabians used to look up to Yemenis because Yemen was was a country with a lot of pride and a very successful country, whereas the tables have turned and now Yemen depends on Saudi Arabia to help them out in wars and to help them out in tough situations, because Saudi Arabia is a very wealthy country, while Yemen is really one of the poorest countries in the nation, in the entire Middle East and in the entire world, actually. So the difference is also the form of government. Saudi Arabia is a kingdom, while Yemen is a constitutional republic. So that's the difference. That's it. Thank you for listening.